Hello, and welcome to our first installment of Replay, which is our new behind the scenes series where we're taking an opportunity to do a deep dive and get to know some of our favorite artists and most frequent collaborators just a little bit better. My name is Matthew Wright, and I have the incredible pleasure of being the artistic director of ArtsWest. Tonight, I'm so pleased to share with you this conversation with Lex Marcos, one of our most frequent and favorite collaborators. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, Matt. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm keeping safe and sane. How are you?
Safe and distance. Good. Same. We're all still working from home, but we're trying to make the magic happen while we're all tucked away at home. All right, so let's hop right in. We're going to talk today a little bit about you and your life and your style and your artistry. Which I love because I feel like I know you so well, having done 6 or 7 shows with you at this point. And I love the opportunity to get to share what's inside of your mind with other people. So talk to me a little bit, Lex, about how the practice of making art began for you.
Well, it all started in Manila. I actually started as a performer first. So I was a member of this, university choir, and I went on tour with them. We traveled in states and some parts of Europe. And then when I went back, I decided to be an actor. So I started learning how to act and joined, small directing classes. That's where I get my training. And then while doing that, some directors who are also professors asked me to audition in some place, and then I was able to act, and fortunately was able to get out of the university and became a legit professional actor. Wow. And then when I was acting, and I began to my interest in stage design started. And then one of my directors, who also is a stage designer, I asked him if I can enroll in his class. So we have in our university where I came from, we have this theater department that has stage design class. So I enrolled in his class. He accepted me, even though I'm in fine arts. It's a different college. So I cross-enrolled and took the class. And, he accepted me and took his class. And after that, after the course, he asked me to design his next directorial play. And he talked to me and he said, I think it's about time that we train a new designer. And I think I was just in the right time, the right place. Mm-hmm. So he asked me, can you design my next play? And then I said, of course, how can you say no to that? And I thought I actually thought I had a problem with his class. And then he said, isn't that a good problem? That's why I still remember that his reaction, isn't that a good problem? And, I said yes. And that's the beginning of my journey into stage design. I think I was equipped with, the tools. I was equipped with the tools. I was able to practice already professionally while I was in Manila. So I committed a lot of mistakes doing it, mm-hmm. doing the job, looking at the set while it's the show is being staged, and then you'll see all the mistakes. It's it just feel horrible sometimes looking at and those are the mistakes. And then until I realized and my friends are also the professionals telling me that you might need to go out of the country and observe or study further, because it came to a point that I'm already questioning my skills, and then I'm beginning to be what I call this, I'm sort of on a plateau. It's either you have a break, you get a break, or absorb things or like study further.
Mm-hmm.
And grad school was not really a plan. So it was like what you said earlier, like David Gallo helped me and everything just fell into place. I met Susan Hilferty and then Tom Lynch, who introduced me Seattle
Mm-hmm.
Theater. I'm not even like familiar with what's happening in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And then UW came in. And when I was in grad school, yes, of course it's difficult, but I think I have that enough tools and knowledge to sustain and to be able to survive in
Mm-hmm.
grad school. And you know how it works in grad school. It's really difficult, and it's going to prepare you to be ready in the world when you practice.
So we've been looking at some photos of your work, both from the Philippines and stuff you've done in Seattle too.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I notice about your work every single time we work together and every single time I look at a new photo of your work is the musicality that makes its way into the art that you make, and also the expression and the expressionism. I think I've told you before, one of the things I love about your work is that even when we're working on a piece of realism that wants a realistic space, something with realistic architecture, you always find a way, either subtle or overt, to get in this sense of poetry, this sense of musicality, this sense of expressionism, even in realistic spaces, which I think is so awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed about the work in the Philippines is that it seems to be on a very, very large scale. And so when we talk about ArtsWest, we're looking at 149 seats, essentially a black box, sometimes arranged.
Right. It's so challenging, Matt.
Yeah. So how is designing for ArtsWest space different from other things that you've worked on?
Yeah, like I said, it's challenging because you're very close to the audience, and it has its limitation too. I'm not saying like if it's small, it's more limited. Large theater has its limitation too, right? So you have to really be flexible about what you're going to do in terms of like treating the space. It's really about like how you're going to deal with the energy in the space. So I'm beginning to be more familiar with that. Like when you come into the theater, to the venue, like you really have to just like feel the energy, how you're going to control that, and I'm beginning to be more particular about negative space. These are the spaces that are not being occupied by Scenic.
Mm-hmm.
And then because that's going to be like a container for energy, and how especially the actors would use that space. It's very important. And I think that's the most important, especially in terms of like, if you really have to like connect the relationship of the script, the actors, and the audience. When you're reading the play and you're designing the play, because there are plays that actors need to be heard more, be felt more by the audience, and there are like of course plays that are like grand and the energy should just like grow, and then they're like very intimate, like you're like the audience should just be very close to the actors, like you're zooming in like camera and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting hearing you talk about that because and this thought's just occurring to me now, there's a way of looking at architecture, and we see examples of especially architecture that can seem, at least to my eye, like an old dead thing, an old lifeless, inanimate thing. And it seems like the spaces that you create, thinking about the negative space, thinking about the energy in the space, I think that everything I've seen you work on feels alive, actually.
Oh,
Even
in
Jane Eyre, which we had a heck of a time, you and I, trying to figure out Jane Eyre, because we wanted it to feel like a real space, like a glade or whatever it was in England. But we're in a theater, and so there's the limitation. We're up very close, up close to the thing. And in the end, you found a way to combine realistic elements that were not entirely real. We weren't insisting on the realism of the heather. We weren't insisting on the realism of the turf. And then you gave us this beautiful mural across the back wall that was basically not a photorealistic version of a sky, but rather a kind of abstract or expressionistic painting of a sky. And I think that space in particular to me felt very alive. Even though we had a bunch of dead things, actually, we had like fake heather that we got Michael's or whatever.
Right.
An astro.
Scenic is just a support. I mean, it's a support for the whole thing. And sometimes it's also good to like embrace the limitation rather than to like fight it. And you also have to consider like other artistic elements that would come in. So what I also do sometimes is, I'm always aware of like how lighting, especially lighting, can do well if you give them the opportunity to like have their potential of supporting the show. Mm-hmm. So I'm always aware of that, and I've kind of been learning that through my practice. And again, I'm more of like how it will look cohesive rather than forcing it to look like beautiful or like it should look real or it should look whole when other artistic elements come in. That's always the goal, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's have a look at a design that you did for ArtsWest recently. The Last World ArtsWest Wrestling Champion, this world premiere musical by our friend Justin Huertas. And, I think that this is a good example of how to create a space that is non-realistic, but is kind of realistic when we want it to be, but mostly is expressionistic, but mostly is an empty space, And it's about the show is about a set of given circumstances that don't have real world antecedents, we're going into the undertow, into this mythical world. So remind me, because I don't even remember now, how did we begin even talking about what this is going to be?
I don't know. Well, I think we just started I just started sitting during workshops, and I remember just like scribbling, where like a human figure would be in this, like looking at the script, the figure should be here, and then I'm not putting anything like any scenic elements. It's just figures. And then I remember you mentioned about ancient and like kind of like underwater. And so from there, and then you also mentioned like bodies like moving in space.
Yeah.
So from there, I started to just like create something, for us to have that conversation, and for Justin, and Justin, the other members of the team can give suggestion.
Yeah.
I think it all started from there, and I gave you those drawings first for you to be able to like comment, and from there it all just like grew into something. The role is really to create that space, whether it's illusionistic, absurd, formal, iconic. That world should support the storytelling, and the designer should be able to have that means of expressing it freely and fast on paper or three-dimensional work for himself to assess, and then if that design or that piece is good or like can be a conversation, or to have that, to achieve that, to be able to achieve that work, so you can create that dialogue with your director, and that's the start of the collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have something first, like as freely, as expressively as possible, as fast, and that work can be, can be something. It can be a fast drawing, or like a very childlike drawing, or like a piece of like a scale model, which is not really fully finished yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring it to your team or to your director, like what I normally do with you. Like, I just bring something, or I have to show you something that would, we can discuss.
Yep.
I
think one of the best examples of that is the stuff we have from the Who and the What, because I think that when this actually has more detail in it than a lot of the drawings we work
right.
with. In the initial stages of a process, which I love. Like some of my favorite, I love your fully rendered sets. I love your fully built and constructed sets. But one of my favorite things about working with you is seeing those initial drawings, which sometimes are no more than circles and lines, or like this here, a sketch that is just of bodies and a piece of furniture.
Yeah, but it's like notation to me. Like when you're composing probably music, you just like, write something or whatever, and then it can get complicated later on. But what I do is like just draw the relationship of like characters into the space. So the access and like how they're moving, or how, because it is always important for me to like, I always ask myself, how far is this character into this character when they are conversing, So I try to like imagine that, and then I don't really think of like detailed set yet. I just think of like that, and then from the next scene, where are they going? Is it going to be fast, or like, is it going to be? And then from there, like, is it going to be like a movie that is just going to be snap, and then there's some. So those are the things I'm really trying to be particular with in terms of like when I read further the script, and then those are the things that I would also ask the director. So how are you seeing this scene moving from one place to this place? It's kind of like, sometimes it's filmic, and sometimes it's like it will have time. I remember you describing it, and then you, for some reason, were like thinking both about like the circle.
Yeah.
And so I just like gave you something like a drawing, and then from there I just played with it, and
I remember that actually. Yeah, here's that first drawing, and I remember we had been thinking independently about of smaller stages, smaller circular stages, and then you showed up to, I think, probably our first meeting with this. And I was like, perfect, make that. I'll see you at Tech. Looks great. But this is how it began. And then it became this beautiful design. And then I think the NANCE is a good example too of, one of the decisions we always need to make that we were talking about with the Who and the what is the relationship of the audience to the piece, and what's the relationship of the audience to the space. So in the NANCE, here we see you have created the entire space to feel like it is part of the club. So the architecture goes all the way off and around, and then you actually put audience members at cabaret tables within the space. Even though it's in 3/4 thrust, you had audience and cabaret tables all the way upstage, essentially behind the main playing space.
Right. Yeah.
There we go. You can see them, which was such an interesting choice. And so it was like this. I've never seen a space that feels simultaneously like a 3/4 thrust space combined with a proscenium, because you had that big proscenium piece, combined with something that's in the round, because we have all these folks that are on the other side of the action. So we staged it as though it was in the round.
Right. And also like lighting helped this show to have that intimate moments and like grand moments too, right? And then at the same time, the audience are like part of it. And I'm really glad that, Tristan was game about like, putting those running lights and, the what I call those lights, the hanging lights like on the ceiling, which is like, it really helped to achieve that character of being in a burlesque stage.
Yeah, I think so. And then look at this, when, the lighting, it's so amazing that you think about scenic design in terms of lighting, because when we look at this series of production photos here, the tones that we see are browns and those old photographs that are not black and white anymore, but are like,
right. Yeah.
I forget, someone in the world right now is thinking like, the word is this.
Nostalgic or...
Yeah. But when the set
sepia, sepia.
Sepia. That's it. Sepia. Thank you. So there's like sepia tones here that come when the set is lit this way. But overall, the colors on the set are bright red and gold, which was, I remember that being a thing too, because I think this is the first set of a show that I've directed that it is red. Because
and I was also game with that. Ooh, I love red, so let's do it. I don't normally use red in like shows that I design, but I think this calls for it. Yeah,
and that my color sense always goes exclusively to cool tones, like blues, grays, maybe greens is just how I sort of like see the world. And then, one day you just brought in like, I don't even know what it was, but you brought in something and you were like, what if it's bright scarlet red and like bright gleaming brassy gold? And I was like, sure, let's do it. Like,
let's do it. Okay. And it worked. Yeah. I'm glad it worked. Yeah.
And thank you for bringing like, other colors into my life.
Well, consistency is always like, the goal, to be able to like consistently design, because every project is like, it's a learning process. And I'll have this project with you, Dob. You're getting me for their next show in spring, and it's in person, hopefully will manifest. So yeah, I'm excited for that. And I've been just like catching up with like readings, watching good films, films that I've missed, art films and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's great.
Playing guitar. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So
picked it up again recently.
Yeah. So I've been learning again. There's a lot of things to do. And it's also not bad to like just pause and have a break and reflect,
Yeah.
This is also like, I think this is also a good time to do that.
And I think that's so key. And it's something that we often, I think, miss in our sort of like conveyor belt system of pump out the pieces of theater.
Right.
Sometimes we need to encourage each other to, and I feel like you do that with me, Sometimes I know there are meetings where I'm like gunning, and I'm like, I don't know, what is this going to be like? We go into rehearsal in 2 weeks and like, we need to know this thing. And I've had so many meetings with you where you just like shit it all out,
Yeah.
And you're just like, let's just breathe for a second and sort of like, think and get our feet around and just be thoughtful about what we're doing. And that's another thing that I love about the stuff that we've been able to do together.
Yeah. So
cheers. This is coffee.
Cheers.
A long day,
Matt.
right?
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I can't wait until we can make something again. And I'm sure that our audiences can't wait to see your work again.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I would like to thank ArtsWest, because ArtsWest was one of like the theater companies who gave me like the first opportunity to design here in Seattle. So, I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. Well, we're thankful for you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So here's the project, and be well, my friend. And I'll talk to you soon.
You too, Matt. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.